But welcome to Verbal on Life. My name is Noel, battling MS. Over here in this video, we're going to talk about Puff Daddy, right? So before we get started, make sure you hit that like button. So like that, we can spread the word. Now, we're going to check out a video by Nate the Lawyer, who did an excellent video on what's going on with Puff Daddy. Let's check it out.
Breaking news tonight, Sean Diddy Combs has been arrested in a Manhattan hotel this evening after a grand jury indicted the music mogul.
Okay, guys. So last night, September 16th, Diddy was taken into custody in New York. He was taken into federal custody in New York. Now, reports state that he was taken into custody inside of his hotel lobby.
Breaking news now. The indictment against Sean Diddy Combs has just been unsealed. Combs is being charged with racketeering conspiracy, alleging he ran an enterprise that he engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, or kidnapping, arson, and other crimes.
So Sean P. Diddy Combs has been indicted by the feds and is looking at life sentences if he's convicted.
So life sentence if he's convicted. I hope the guy's not suicidal, because if they try to pull a Jeffrey Epstein on him, insane.
Break down the indictment. This is a federal indictment out of the Southern District of New York against Sean P. Diddy Combs, and it's packed with allegations of racketeering, sex trafficking, forced labor, and more. We're going to dive into the specifics and pull out direct quotes from the document to back everything up so you know that we're just not making this stuff up. Now, I'm going to ask you to buckle up because this is going to get intense. So the first charge that we want to look at in the indictment is the racketeering conspiracy charge under 18 U.S.C. section 1962 C and D, or better known as RICO. Okay, so what is RICO? Well, RICO is a law designed to target organized crime. And here the government is accusing Combs of running a criminal organization. The indictment states that Combs, quote, and others known and unknown were members and associates of a criminal organization referred to in the indictment as Combs Enterprise. The enterprise, according to the indictment, quote, engaged in and attempted to engage in sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Now, the Combs Enterprise was allegedly structured to serve multiple purposes, such as protecting Combs' reputation, ensuring his personal sexual gratification, and maintaining control over those around him. Now, one of the more chilling aspects of this indictment is that Combs allegedly secured absolute loyalty from members of the Combs Enterprise through acts of violence and personal threats. Now, remember, RICO isn't about just running a business. This charge is about running a criminal organization where illegal activities are coordinated and carried out to maintain someone's power and authority over a group. Now, after stating that Combs' enterprise was a criminal organization, then the indictment goes into what types of crimes this criminal organization was performing.
And also, what about the group, right? RICO. So I'm thinking a whole bunch of people are going down with him. Like, it wasn't a one-man operation. So let's see if he mentions that.
First, it starts with sex trafficking. Now, sex trafficking is illegal in the United States under 18 U.S.C. section 1591. Now, this statute simply makes it illegal to recruit or coerce someone in commercial sex acts through force or fraud, particularly if interstate transportation is involved. Here's what the indictment says happened in this case. It says Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. These performances were called, quote, freak-offs, and described as elaborate sex productions that Combs himself orchestrated. The indictment alleges that Combs used his employees from his, quote, criminal organization to arrange for women and sex workers to be transported across state lines for these freak-offs.
The RICO charge, I'm assuming that involves him as the head guy, the guy on top, and all his employees. So there's a whole lot of people.
Key fact is that Combs allegedly distributed, quote, a variety of controlled substances to victims in part to keep victims obedient and compliant during these freak-off events. The feds also allege in a document that in or about May 24th, during the searches of Combs' residence in Miami and LA, that law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and about 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Now, the thing that turns these freak-offs into sex trafficking events is the coercion and the interstate travel involved. See, the government is alleging that these women were manipulated, drugged, and coerced into participating in these sex acts, which is a federal offense. Now, this also mirrors what Combs' ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura said in her lawsuit when she alleged that Combs forced her to have sex with male prostitutes against her will.
R&B singer Cassie has accused hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs of rape and a decade of physical abuse. The two were romantically involved for years.
By the way, all of this is because of Donald Trump. Yes, Donald Trump. Because you were not able, there's a statute of limitation. You can only sue somebody, you got a certain number of years. But because they were trying to get Donald Trump locked up, they switched it out and they took away the statute of limitation. So if something happened to you a long time ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago, you're allowed to now sue and bring the lawsuit ahead. Like if you miss your window, I think the window was like 4 years, 4 or 5 years statute of limitation of suing somebody for rape. But in order to get Trump, they took that away. So when they took that away, a lot of women took advantage of celebrities or took advantage of the opportunity that they could sue celebrities. And they went ahead and started suing people left and right. And Puffy was one of them that they sued. And now look at all the craziness he's in. All of that just to take down Trump.
Years, but in a lawsuit made public today, Cassie says there was a pattern of control, drug use, and forced sexual encounters.
Lawsuit headlines with a trigger warning for containing graphic sexual assault information, describing in detail sex trafficking allegations, in which Combs would force Cassie to take drugs, wear masks, and perform sex acts on other men so he could watch. Cassie says Combs raped her when she tried to leave him. She says he beat her, then made her stay in hotels or his home until the bruises healed.
So as you can see, with all these lawsuits coming out against Combs, especially one from Cassie, it clearly lays out the sex trafficking allegations that you now see in this federal indictment. Okay, let me pause this video and ask you a question. Have you used Google Chrome's incognito mode between 2016 and 2023? If so, you may be entitled to up to 5.
All right, I want to pause it because that's the advertisement. But like I said, Sean Diddy Combs, he was one of the people against Trump. And then this happens. That's crazy.
Points on you. And so this is all about data. They're trying to figure out how.
Donald Trump is untouchable. Every time somebody goes up against him, it backfires. All right, let me fast forward this commercial.
Sex acts, but it's USC section 1580. My firm isn't the only one involved. For instance, one of the largest firms in the country, Morgan & Morgan, is also asking for clients for this lawsuit. Now, for more information and to get started, visit browserclaim.com today to protect your rights and hold Google.
It's a commercial, so
Description and in the pinned comment. Now, back to the video. Next, the feds charge Combs with violations of 18 USC section 1589, forced labor. Now, this section criminalizes obtaining labor or services through force, threats, or coercion. Now, I know what you're going to say. The labor here isn't typical. It's actually sex acts, but it's coercion and force that make these charges stick. You're forcing people to have sex against their will, even if you're paying for that sexual activity. Now, according to the indictment, Combs used force, threats of force, coercion, and to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts.
And there's enough people to say, yeah, I was coerced. Because now everybody's trying to get money. Now it's a money grab. How is Puff Daddy a billionaire and all these people just standing on the side broke? No. So now the more people that jump in and say, yeah, I was coerced, let's use the exact terminology, more and more people are now suing.
Acts with male commercial sex workers. Remember, that's what Cassie was alleging. The indictment also goes on to say Combs allegedly controlled these women by leveraging his financial support and threatening to cut them off at any time, effectively trapping them in these situations where they had no other options. Now, the feds point to the threatening nature of Combs's business environment by saying that on one or more occasions, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims and witnesses of his abuse. Now, the feds allege that this goes beyond manipulation. It's about using a combination of threats, violence, and financial control to force women into performing sex acts with these male prostitutes.
But like I said, a lot of this stuff went past the statute of limitation. But ever since they opened up the window for like a year, everybody came out the woodworks to get their money. Stick their hands on a money bag and get theirs.
And this constitutes forced labor under federal law. The next crime the feds allege was going on is kidnapping, which is in violation of 18 USC section 1201. Now, federal kidnapping laws kick in when someone is transported across state lines against their will, which is exactly what the indictment is saying Combs is doing to these women. Now, it's important to note, these are underlying crimes to support the RICO charge. Remember, this is supposed to be a criminal conspiracy for a corrupt organization. For instance, the indictment claims that Combs transported women across state lines to participate in these sex performances, which amounts to kidnapping because they were coerced and didn't leave on their own, according to the indictment. Now, the indictment also goes on to say, even though these women may not have been physically restrained, the indictment makes it clear that the combination of coercion, drugs, and intimidation was enough to strip them of their ability to freely choose whether to stay or to go, which brings the charges of kidnapping into play. Now, when we think about kidnapping, we generally think about the person being restrained or tied up, but the feds aren't alleging that in this situation. They're saying that Combs created an environment where women felt trapped and unable to leave. And even if
it could have been a date, like you're dating Puff Daddy and this is how he parties. And then he took partying to the next level, involving drugs and alcohol. And wow, it went from just a date to, oh my God, I think I got coerced.
if there wasn't a literal locked door preventing them to leave. The law considers that if you're coerced and manipulated enough, this could meet the standard for kidnapping, especially when someone's transported across state lines. The feds also charged Diddy with violating 18 U.S.C. Section 201. That's a bribery statute. Now, the indictment accuses Combs of trying to cover up his crimes by offering bribes to key witnesses and others who might expose his actions. Now, for this bribery charge, the indictment points to one specific event that involves Cassie Ventura that occurred in March 2026. Remember that video from the LA hotel where you see Combs kicking, dragging, and throwing a vase at Cassie? Well, the indictment says that when hotel security intervened, that Combs tried to bribe the staff to keep the incident quiet. Now, the government says that Combs had a pattern of offering hush money to silence witnesses or victims, which is what gives rise to the bribery charges. The government is saying that this is a clear attempt by Combs to avoid the legal consequences and cover up his illegal activity by paying people off. Lastly, we've got obstruction of justice charges under 18 U.S.C. Section 1503. Now, this charge involves any action that interferes with the administration of justice, such as witness tampering or attempting to cover up crimes like paying people off. Now, if you haven't noticed by now, all the charges kind of build upon themselves. If you think about it, first they say you have a criminal organization, so they hit you with the RICO count. Then they say, well, in furtherance of the criminal organization, you were sex trafficking. And since you were sex trafficking, that means you were forcing people to do things like have sex against their will. That gets you to forced labor. And since you were using forced labor by transporting people across state lines, that gets them the kidnapping charge. And since you were paying people off to hide the fact you were doing all these things, that gets you the bribery charge. So the government specifically has built this document on all the preceding charges. So now let's talk about obstruction of justice again. Well, the indictment outlines that Combs used his influence at Combs Entertainment to intimidate and manipulate witnesses, preventing them from coming forward. It states that, quote, Combs and other members of the Combs enterprises threatened individuals who witnessed crimes. And additionally, it says Combs allegedly used his employees to help cover up his actions. Obviously, employees, that brings in the RICO charges. And they would do this through threats of retaliation against anyone who may expose him. Now, the government was claiming that Combs was actually preventing justice from being served by using threats and intimidation to silence potential witnesses and cover up his illegal activity. Now, last but not least, remember when police raided Combs' homes in Miami and Los Angeles?
They're going to probably be arresting me just because we want to have a good time.
Multiple safes broken into, drawers ripped open, closets ransacked, boxes of gun ammo, and Grammy Awards. New images from TMZ show inside Diddy's ransacked Beverly Hills mansion during the coast-to-coast raids where no arrests were made.
Now, people were wondering, like, hey, if you raided his house, how come no arrests were made? But the feds lay out in this indictment what they found, like cocaine, Xanax, oxycodone, and the date rape drug. So it seems like the feds found all this illegal stuff and were waiting to build their case. So at the end of the day, there you have it. The key charges and facts behind them. Sean Combs is facing a lifetime in prison because these are serious allegations. We're talking about racketeering, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, bribery, obstruction of justice, arson. If convicted, Combs could face decades, and I mean, even forget about the decades, the rest of his life in prison. These charges carry significant penalties, and we're just talking about the federal charges. There could also be state charges following these prosecutions. So Combs has a lot of money, he has a lot of resources, and he's going to need them all because it seems like the dam has broke and he is facing some serious criminal liability.
You know what? I wonder, let me say this much, because this is crazy. Okay, I was thinking of three things listening to all of this. Number one, who pulled the trigger? who called the quiz for Trump, for Diddy? Who said enough? Let's make this indictment. Let's lock him up. Because this is not new. He's been doing this for a while. And when you become a billionaire at the top of the game, at the top of everything, got money, he got private jets. The man is unstoppable, but somebody put a stop and said, you know what? Let's hit him with everything. Let's go to his house and get all the evidence and take him down. That's number one. Number two, all the victims, again, they were past the statute of limitation. And since they opened it up, a lot of truth came out because people get upset. Like, well, why is this guy a billionaire? And here I am struggling in life. Take him down. Let's finish the video.
Now, P. Diddy was denied bail by a federal judge, and here is his attorney explaining why P. Diddy is 1,000% innocent.
So this was the first step. We have a bail appeal scheduled for tomorrow at 3:30 in front of